Hi, everybody. It's MattHawes of The Happy Show, and I'm here today with an entry from my MattHawes blog, which was from January 15th, 2020. And this has to do with the day Adam West snubbed me, and how it was the lowest point of his career. As I continue on, you'll understand what I mean. Adam West, who was born in 1928 and passed away in 2017, was the beloved actor known best for his role as the title character on the 1966 to 1969 television series Batman. After acting for years in various film and TV roles with limited success, Batman made him an international star, and for a time the series was the hottest thing on TV. After the series was canceled, West fell on hard times, finding it difficult to escape his past fame as the Caped Crusader. Eventually, his career would rebound, and he would find himself some renewed success voicing the mayor on the popular cartoon Family Guy. West would remain in demand and at the comics and pop culture convention circuit until his passing in 2017. Here's a picture that was taken at Deaconess Hospital in Evansville, Indiana in 1977 when he was there visiting. Okay, it seems that nearly everyone loved Adam West. For many people, he was their first introduction to the Batman character. Additionally, for a great number of people, he is the embodiment of the comic book hero, and all others who took on that role before and since are merely pretenders to the crown. Even critics of the show feel that it diminished and ridiculed the source material, sullying the public's perception and of the Dark Knight Detective and its with its campy approach. Still, they seem to have a certain reverence for West. And in his later role as Mayor West, he would garner a wider, younger fan base that appreciate his turn as the quirky character. Yes, it seems that nearly everyone loved Adam West, but me. Now, before I'm barraged by a chorus of boos and jeers, I must explain myself. I grew up watching the syndicated reruns of the Batman series, having been born after its initial release on the network TV. I can't tell you with certainty if those reruns were my first exposure to the character, since it's possible I was, reading comics from a young age, and maybe even a Super Friends cartoon every Saturday morning could have been my first exposure. But as a regular viewer of those Batman reruns as a child, I enjoy them very much. In fact, I was excited when my family went to see Adam West at a live appearance of Batman at the Hottie Shrine Circus in November of 1977. Admittedly, being in the relatively ripe old age of 8 years old, I can't recall much about his appearance. However, the one thing that sticks in my mind basically is that Adam West snubbed me. After that night's performance, my family and I went to the backstage along with a group of other families as sort of a meet and greet with West. Now, this wasn't a professional setup meet and greet. I'm just saying that a lot of people were back there to see him. We youngsters excitedly waited to see our hero and speak with him as West emerged from the stage, but instead of greeting us, West made a beeline straight for his bus. He did nothing to acknowledge us pint-sized admirers who had been waiting as patiently as a kid could on the sidelines. Not a simple greeting nor a casual glance in our direction, though he was definitely aware of our presence. If you think of us youngsters, if you think we youngsters were unhappy at being snubbed by our favorite TV superhero, my father left feeling positively incensed at how his children were ignored. Riding in the back of the car with my family, I began drawing a picture on the program booklet from the circus. When my father asked what I was doing, he snapped, "Why are you drawing that SOB, basically?" And I said, "Because," I replied, "Adam West is not Batman." I would continue to watch the reruns, and I enjoyed the series to this day for what it was, even if I had soured on the lead actor. Admittedly, whenever I would think of Adam West in the years that come, it was always tainted with the memory of what happened at that circus. I would later hear tales from other kids who saw Adam West or even Burt Ward at appearances that the two would sometimes be in costume drinking beer and such. These alleged occurrences did nothing to help change my view of West. In fact, it cemented for me that my own experience was apparently not an aberration of some sort. Oh, and by the way, before we go forward, this is the 44th annual Shrine Circus. This is the ad that was for that year's the event where he was at the circus. So we'll go on here. In 1994, Back to the Batcave was published by Berkeley Books. The publication was an autobiography written by Adam West with an assist by author Jeff Roven. I didn't buy the book, but I did check out from the local library not too long after it came out. Despite my feelings towards the man, I was interested in what West had to write about his history on the Batman TV series. Imagine my surprise when I read in a chapter detailing his hard times after the series cancellation that West considered the lowest point of his career was being shot out of a cannon during an appearance in Evansville, Indiana. Was it possible that this a possible explanation for his rudeness towards a group of children all those years before? By the way, here's another thing there, another ads from that paper, or from the papers at the time here locally. Okay, now I recall him writing in that book that the cannon incident was at a circus. In fact, his only appearance in Evansville during the era he described was at the Heidi Shrine Circus at the performance there. I mention this because in years to come, whenever this tale is recounted in interviews and articles, it is most often cited as having been a carnival. The closest thing to Carnival Evansville has is the Westside Nut Club's Fall Festival, which he never publicly appeared at that festival. I no longer have access to the book to check again on what Weston Roven actually wrote, as it's no longer available in the libraries of my city, and on eBay and other stuff, the price is just more than I'm going to pay. But over the years, the story about how Adam West being fired out of Canada was reported in a number of articles. The gist of the story is the same, but the locale and the actual year is often given incorrectly. Let's look at some of these news stories. Okay, Adam West Behind the Mask was an article by Robert Chalmers of the Independent UK, and in 2005 article he wrote, his lowest point came when he was in his bat suit. This, remember, is a man who could have had a career as a Stanford academic, waiting to be fired out of a cannon at a carnival in Evansville, Indiana. TV's original Batman, Adam West, spills the beans on a superhero life by Peter Sheridan, Express UK, November 15th, 2014. He quotes, it's the article quoted here. By the early 1970s, he, West, had hit rock bottom, finding himself squeezed into a giant cannon, wearing his old Batman costume, waiting to be fired out of a carnival in Evansville, Indiana. Again, they say carnival. It was a circus, not a carnival. And it wasn't the early 70s. It was more like 77, so more mid to late 70s, but you know. And then another quote, I was doing things that I wasn't very comfortable doing. This is Adam West being quoted. I was not the kind of guy that I was not the kind of guy that I respected very much. I'd do anything for money. There were definitely times when I regretted ever being Batman. From the article, wholly influential actor Adam West continues to shape Hollywood by Matt Zoller Seitz, I guess, from The Vulture in 2017. The quote is, by the early 1970s, here again we have the same thing, he had hit rock bottom, find himself squeezed in a cannon. I think, yeah, that was quoted, that Vulture was quoting the same article that I had already quoted from. And I mentioned that here. It appears the Vulture pretty much lifted a line from the Express UK website. Anyway, and then the late great Adam West by Terence Towles Canote, I don't know how you pronounce his name there. A Shroud of Thoughts from June 10th, 2017. Quote, to make ends meet, he often appeared in the Batman costume at country fairs, rodeos, and store openings. Perhaps the lowest point of his career came when he was shot out of a cannon in costume at the Heidi Shrine Circus in Evansville, Indiana in November 1977. And as I note in my blog, this guy gets it right. He got the location right, the month and year right, and the city and state right. So actually somebody who did their homework. Here's a few more. Adam West Batman actor obituary from the Telegraph in the UK from 2017. He found himself in costume with no stunt double. We'll touch on this here in a moment. Being fired out of a cannon at the county fair in Evansville, Indiana, that he realized he would have to take whatever he could get. Okay, I'm going to stop here and before I read the other quotes. You can read ahead if you're going to, but but when it says with no stunt double. That sounds like some addition this writer decided to add himself, because I don't remember anybody mentioning that before. I mean, Adam West always claimed it was him, but I'm just saying, this guy saying with no stunt double, like with authority. No. But again, we'll get to that. Remembering Adam West's TV Batman by Servo Jefferson Tatudu from 2017. For many years, he would work events and characters as Batman until he hit what's described as a personal low while waiting to be fired out of cannon at a carnival in Evansville, Indiana, while dressed as the Cape Crusader. Once again, they're saying it's a carnival. Gotham's Finest, Adam West, by Joseph McCabe, SFX Magazine 290 from 2017. Forced to rely on his personal appearances to earn a living, he at one point suffered the indignity of being shot out of a cannon in his Batman costume at a carnival in Evansville, Indiana. See, a lot of these people, they don't really do much research. They just look at the first article, I guess, online that gives the information, and they repeat the same information, basically. Okay, so then there was another article by Catherine Beck whenever he had passed. Actually, a little bit later, because it was in History Link in 2019 here. After Batman, the typecast West had a tough time getting the work he could, including attending some fan events. He later said he felt it was the lowest ebb when being shot out of a cannon in his Batman costume in Evansville, Indiana. Okay, and so here, which is no longer available, the video, but I've looked up before I making this video. He was on the Hollywood True Hollywood Story, and if you can hear it here in a bit, this is the segment I got keyed to where he talks about being shot out of a cannon. They don't mention Evansville specifically, but they mention that it's in Indiana.
In 1976, the 48-year-old actor reached an all-time low when he put on his Batman costume and proceeded to climb into a cannon to be shot across the sky during a personal appearance in Indiana.
But what it did was tell me that regardless of the money, if I continued to play on my success as the Cape Crusader, I wasn't going to do anything else.
Okay, so there again, he even makes mention that he was shot out of a cannon. There's a reason I'm bringing this all up, so we'll get about him being shot out of this cannon specifically. Let's see here. In the true Hollywood Story, gets the year wrong. It's was in 1977. They said 1976 on the program. One last example from the 2013 documentary starring Adam West, film buff. West agent Fred Westbrook recount. It's now the mid 1970s. Adam's getting a shot out of a cannon at a carnival. Here he says it's a carnival, circus. It was a low time in his life. A carnival, a county fair, regardless of the erroneous reporting, it was that appearance at the Shrine Circus of 77 that's being referenced by West in his book. And having read that West considered that period, and particularly that specific appearance, to be the very lowest point of his career, I almost began to feel differently about my own experience and trying to meet him when I was a child. Almost, but I couldn't quite help feel some degree of resentment. We were just kids, he snubbed after all. Still, I tried to find a modicum of sympathy for the actor's plight. And this is a photo taken by a friend of mine, actually. Let's see here. Or actually a friend of mine who was at the circus, and that's Batman at the Circus in 1977 here in Evansville. Okay, so interestingly, when West spoke of this period, he always made it seem as if he had a great epiphany about making such appearances. Interestingly, because he would continue to make such appearances for years to come in spite of his life reassessment. In fact, he even returned to Evansville in 1986, along with his one-time co-star Burt Ward, for a World of Will show. Ironically, West in Batman gear tells the local TV news reporter Derek Wilkerson that Evansville is one of his favorite cities. Let's see if we can hear it here.
We are always ready. It's a little slow here. Evansville is one of my favorite cities, and I think most of the crime here has been cleaned up. However, we are always ready.
So that again, that video there is from 1986, a car show. So if he had Epiphany in 1977, he still kept doing those car shows, which I think a lot of people realize that because there's a lot of those appearances he made. In fairness, while being derisive about him being uh, in the circus in Evansville, I guess West never did compare being Evansville to living in Prague as Madonna had done when she stayed in the city of film illegal their own in 1991. That's a whole nother story right there, really. She couldn't watch her MTV at the house where she stayed, you see. Anyway, in 2010, a friend of mine and I went to the Wizard Chicago Comic Book Convention where West, along with Burt Ward and Julie Newmar, were appearing as celebrity guests. My past let's see, I'm sorry. Oh, my past near encounter with West was still strong in my mind, if somewhat tempered by what I had learned of West's plight over the years. I was not exactly interested in paying the man for an autograph, but when my friend who was really excited to meet West and Ward, he had paid basically to get a picture with him, I went ahead and accompanied him. I'm going to paraphrase sometimes, as you can see on these passages here. Anyway, I accompanied him to the table where Adam West was speaking with, or sat there. I'm sorry, he was there with his agent. At the time we were in queue, there was hardly anyone else in line. My friend stood there in front of West at the signing table, telling West about how big of a fan he was and such. West said nothing, his head pointing downward while he doodled some odd shape on a scrap of paper. He only looked up once, peering at my friend through the side of his eye as my friend made some mention of West's role on Family Guy. West remained silent and went back to his doodling as the agent explained the cost of the photographs to my friend. My friend, a big friendly and silly sort, did get his picture taken with the two Batman stars in his ill-fitting Batman outfit. This guy, my friend here, Justin, right there, he appeared on the Happy Show a few times in character as a Batman parody, and so he got to meet Adam West and Burt Ward at that show, and that's what this was taken. This is 2010. After getting his photos taken with him, my friend came up to told me how friendly West was acting to him at that time. I said, "Yeah, he better be. You paid $200 for that photo." Yep, you read that right. I'd smile if I got that every time I took a picture too. So my point is about this is that when Justin and I were at the table, like I said, I was barely acknowledged him. You know, he in fact, I would say he didn't really acknowledge him at all. He just kind of looked up at him at one point. Meanwhile, it was the assistant at the table who was doing all the talking, and basically that was just telling us how much the pictures were and all that. And that's even with my friend Justin trying to talk to Adam West and just tell him how he was a fan and everything. So again, whenever he went to take a picture with him, that Adam West smiled. Okay, fine, but you know, he literally paid him $200. Him and Burt Ward both together for that photo op. Anyway, so I honestly remain mixed on how to think about the man. I will say that I still watch the Batman series and I own the Blu-ray set. I also get a kick out of his appearances as Mayor West on Family Guy, and I'm not opposed to watching his other work on film or TV. Though the Wizard World appearance didn't do much to change my overall perception of the man, for many fans, Adam West is their Batman, but for me, he's an actor who played the role of a character I like. Batman, especially children, sometimes think too highly of celebrities. Society tends to put them on a pedestal and deify them. Deify. I learned that lesson in 1977 as a young fan at the circus that celebrities are all too human. Now, normally this would be a good spot to end this blog entry, right? But then there's something of mystery about what really happened concerning Adam West and the story about being fired out of a cannon at that 1977 appearance. That mystery being, did Adam West really get fired from a cannon? This matter was raised on a message board dedicated to the 1966 Batman TV show. In fact, the message board is called the 1966 Batman Message Board. Now, my memory is somewhat foggy, being that I was still a youngster at the time, and I don't recall him having been shot from the cannon. I asked my mother if she remembered such a thing, and she didn't think so. And on the message board, one member wrote, who said he lived in Evansville at the time, It says he remembered the cannon firing, but here's the caveat, and we'll get to this here. But the board member, Clavier Anke, or Harry Anka, I don't know how you say his name, but anyway, he says, I had no way to prove it, no photos, etc. However, I was there when West was shot out of the cannon. I was 11 years old at the time and remember how bizarre I thought it was. He also did a short skit chasing a couple of bad guys and pulled a lucky kid out of the crowd to be a sidekick and snapped a Robin cape on him. Now, here's the interesting thing. He says he remembers it, but he has no way to prove it, no photos, etc. Nobody has photos. We'll get to that. Nobody has video. And when I say video, I mean, yes, home video, people taking the cameras to circuses and phones that take photos were not a thing, or even video, were not a thing at that time. Okay, but the news would have had, you would think, and maybe the newspaper articles, because I'm getting ahead of myself, but I did look this stuff up. Anyway, contemporary articles from the Evansville Courier Press mentioned that West invited a child from the audience to play the role of Robin. One, in fact, reported Batman will have at least 8 young area fans who will never forget this Hollywood Shrine circus visit, for as part of his routine, he selects a substitute Robin each show. Poor girls in the audience were apparently not outlooked as far as being picked as a female Robin or Batgirl. At least it's not mentioned that they did. Maybe he did. Clavier Anka, however you say his name again, he continues. I have a friend that went to a different performance than I did. I went to one of the first, if not the first, and he said Rust was not shot out of a cannon at the one he went to. I can't imagine that someone in Evansville audience didn't snap a photo. Well, Clavier, I can't imagine it either. I mean, surely somebody would have. According to my mother, my family did not attend the first night of the circus, which ran from November 24th to November 27th, 1977. It's possible that the act was not repeated. Is it possible that it wasn't repeated after the opening night? Could it have been stopped for safety reasons or at the protest of West, who might not want to go through the experience again? Another message board member wrote of his recollections. This is member Emergency Ian. I'm from Evansville, and I was at the Friday evening show. Adam West came out as the final act, of course. I remember him explaining that Robin wasn't there because he was off fighting Catwoman. So he was chasing around some villains who eventually got into this rocket-shaped flying ship, and that went around the circles. I guess it took off, or was supposed to have, in order to catch him. Batman got into the cannon and blasted off. It may have ended with them being apprehended by Batman. I just can't recall. I seem to remember Batman wearing a helmet over his cowl. While both Clavier Anka and Emergency Ian both recall a cannon, there's some discrepancy between their stories. The board member, Clavier, says again, I don't remember Adam putting on or taking off an extra helmet, but a kid lighting the cannon fuse sounds familiar. Maybe the boy who lit the fuse in the show that I was at was the kid that Adam picked out of the crowd to be his Robin. In a Facebook group, a picture was posted of a 4th grade student, Anthony Summer, dressed as a clown with West. He reportedly was the one who lit the fuse of the cannon. Summer had won his school's Clown for a Day contest, with a prize being to perform with West at the circus. And let me enlarge this photo here. So this is the boy who got to light the fuse, and he's dressed as a clown, and there's Adam West. But here's the thing again, as far as lighting a fuse of a cannon, but whether or not it was Adam West that was actually the one fired from it. The Adam West Press Metro article by Roberta Hellman, made no mention of West being fired from a cannon. Her overall review of the circus was positive, but she gave an unflattering assessment of West's performance, noting that there is no act as such. She remarks that what he did was mainly consider a repartee with the audience that she found to be over the heads of the children in the audience. However, she did mention that the final act following West was a takeoff on a popular Star Wars movie theme, with a man and woman performing aerial act from a rocket. Now, would they have two things to do with rockets and cannons? Let's see here. This is the article, by the way, by the Evansville Metro on November 25th, 1977. So it's a contemporary article that I'm reading here. And again, I've read this. The text a little small here to zoom in, but I'm summarizing anyway. But there's no pictures. There's a picture of Batman speaking on a microphone. There's pictures of a guy, one of the clowns or whatever, handing a balloon to one of the kids. No picture of a person being shot with a cannon. And if, Adam West, the actor, was shot with a cannon, wouldn't they think that was worth taking a picture of? This aerial act, by the way, that was at the end of that show at the circus after the Batman act was known as the Quasar Rocket Act. I learned in researching about this for the vlog, actually, about this group, and it was performed by the late Bill Strong and his wife, Trudy. Here's some information regarding that act in Circus Report number 7, the 5th year of that report. February 16th, 1976, about their act. Bill Strong asked me to announce that he and Trudy will positively retire the Pharaoh Cradle Act at the end of this season, and that he has personally retired from all other circus activities except for the new Quasar Rocket Act. The act is really different. They enter on a saucer and have a mechanical robot in the ring, plus a spaceman. Bill has a new system for the use of dry ice to create fog, and will use a ray gun gimmick and flash pods for their War of the Worlds entrance. Most of the act, incidentally, is already built and being used. So this is a picture of the rocket with the acrobats, Bill and Trudy Strong, as they perform for the Quasar Rocket Act. Okay, now this picture in particular was taken at the Hamid Morton Circus in 1977. Could those that recall the cannon stunt actually be thinking of this act? Yet the rocket was a ship, not a cannon, and Adam West was not involved in that performance. A photo posted by Bill Strong on his online blog showed West staying beside his wife Trudy and their son Stephen. The board members of the 1966 Batman questioned whether the soles on the bottom of his boots in this picture, which I'll show you in a second, were as thick as they appeared due to the supposed cannon act. So nothing I have turned up supports that this ever happened. So who knows what the deal is with the boots. Now let me see if we can see the picture here. Down here, it does look like a little extra size there, but it might also be made taller. And there's Trudy with her young son. She was the one with her husband that was performing the acts with the rocket. Memories from men recalling something that happened 40 years ago that happened during the youth can tend to be hazy. Meanwhile, the reporter writing a contemporary review of the opening night did so directly following the show. Surely she would have mentioned him being fired at a cannon. None of these articles or advertisements leading up to the event mention Batman being fired from a cannon. Not the article by writer Gene Sherman? Heinrich? Excuse my mispronunciations here, which is quite detailed in its mentions of the acts at the circus, nor other articles in the same edition of the paper by Bob Holliday, who writes about Adams West's arrival, appearance on WNIN TV, Channel 9's primetime 9 show, where West flirted with female co-host Camille Fife. Interestingly, Holliday's article does contain an error which I'm uncertain was a mistake of the reporter, or if it was just incorrect information. The article gives his age as 38, but he would have been, in fact, 49 years old. And I just realized something. I think that E-Story said he was 45, but going by records, he would have been 49 years old that year. Captain Cape Crusader still a hit, even in civilian clothes. And this article, again, is written by Bob Holliday, and none of the contemporary articles make a mention whatsoever about him being fired out of a cannon. The final day of the circus, the Evansville newspaper featured one last article with many photos taken by Randy Dieter. None of these photos contain West as Batman, and none of them show a cannon act or with or without West, nor is there any mention of an accompanying text. A fellow comic book seller in my area chimed in with his own recollection in the Facebook discussion about this. Tony Starks is his name, not to be confused with Tony Stark Iron Man. He said, I was at the circus for one of the shows, and I interviewed Adam West backstage for the USI, then ISUE, school newspaper, The Shield. I don't recall Adam West being shot out of a cannon. This was over 40 years ago, so I can't swear that he was not shot out of a cannon, but I don't recall that. What I remember is some skit where villains try to sneak up on him. If Adam West said in his autobiography he was shot out of a cannon at the Shrine Circus of Evansville, it seems likely that it's true. He would have better memory than he would remember better than anyone else, and maybe it wasn't shot out of a cannon every performance. But again, Tony did not remember himself seeing him shot out of a cannon. There is no mention in several contemporary articles that covered the circus and West's appearance or there's no published photographs even from that period. And what few photos are public online were taken by people who attended, and also do not have any evidence that he was ever fired out of a cannon. No concrete proof seems to exist. Adam West was also not beyond enhancing a tale or two for effect, as discussed in To the Bat Poles podcast that discussed some discrepancies when West told his autobiography. After going through the microfiche files at my library and searching several sites online, I decided to ask my oldest brother about the matter. He was at the circus as a youth, or along with me and the rest of my family. Now, this is my older brother, and he was older by about 4 years, so would possibly have better memory than me at my age at the time. And he told me that he doesn't remember the Cannon Act either. Of some note is he happened to be at the time I wrote this. He was going to be potentate at the Evansville Holiday Shrine Circus. They serve a certain tenure, and so he's no longer the potentate at the time of this video. But he still is active from time to time with the shrine there, and he actually knows the Shriners who were at the shrine. And at this time, like I say, I asked him about this. He was still potentate, and so he was in direct contact and conversation with these Shriners. And there was those that were still had been part of the Holiday Shrine Circus in '77, including the man who served as a circus director that year. Look, I gotta know this. Okay, my brother asked him about the matter and was told emphatically, I can't talk, that there was no way the shrine would have allowed Adam West to be fired from a cannon at the circus. And that is because of insurance, among many other things. But that comes from a guy directly, in fact, the circus director that year in '77, who confirmed that no way the shrine would have allowed Adam West to be shot out of a cannon at that circus. This settles the matter for me personally. Maybe Adam West was adding to the story of being fired from the cannon in order to make a good story about a bad time in his career. But the man who served as the circus director at the 1977 Holiday Shrine Circus would be unlikely to have a reason not to be truthful about that event. The insurance risk of shooting a celebrity with no circus skills from a cannon seems to outweigh any reason to do so simply for the entertainment value. And so I conclude that unless some new evidence to the contrary pops up, it appears he did not fly high during this low point after all. The whole thing about West being fired cannon has apparently been shot down. And so I just was thinking about that because, like I said in this blog, that's a time I remember, and that's a time where I, being snubbed by Matt West, kind of stamps, put a stamp on how I think of the guy, basically. And again, Batman as a character, I've always enjoyed. I separated the actor from the act back in those days, that night. And this isn't nothing personal against the guy, though, but it did get me to thinking. After all those years, I myself just heard the tales later on about being shot with cannon, though I never remembered that having been the case when I was at the circus. And I didn't doubt it. I just took for granted, okay, yeah, I guess he did. Maybe I just don't remember it. But that's when like I said, many years later, I did this research because I thought, wait a minute, did anybody really see him? And I've asked several people I know. I've asked friends and acquaintances over the last few years, especially at the time I was writing this blog. And I asked them, I said, tell me if you remember for certain that he was shot out of that cannon. The problem is, like I said, a lot of the people were kids. Okay, almost everybody I'm talking to were kids at the time. So the friends and acquaintances, so they wouldn't have necessarily a crystal clear memory. And nobody could flat out say for certain. They could say, I think, but I didn't want to, I think. I wanted, are you for sure he was? And nobody could give that answer. Not even Tony Starks earlier, who wasn't an adult at that time. He was a college age man at that time. Even he doesn't remember it, though he, wants to give a little bit of an out for Adam that maybe it was a different performance than the one he was there for. And that's the same with another person on the message board as I related back earlier, or relayed, I should say, back earlier in this blog. But yeah, so until I do see proof, concrete evidence, I think the story of Adam West being shot out of a cannon is bunk. I do believe it was a low point in his career, perhaps, because I think he just, was bummed out at that point. He did continue to do shows again, though. So, but and apparently something about Evansville made him feel that way. But if it was being fired at a cannon, I'd love to see photographs. If anybody who sees this, go ahead and if you got the photograph, I'd love to see it. Video especially, but a photograph would be fine. And anyway, that's all I got to say for this issue, or this video, this issue. And thanks for watching. Yay!